A 750 horse Camaro, it's PowerBlock time. Check out this awesome 2010 Camaro SS that's been totally amped up by the guys at Lingenfelter Performance Engineering. This is a serious muscle car, and we'll talk with owner Ken Lingenfelter a little later in the show. But up first, it's an all-new Xtreme 4x4 and more on how to build a budget buggy.
Building on a budget means different things to different people. But today on Xtreme 4x4, you can't get a paint job done any cheaper than with a rattle can. We'll show you how to do it right and get eye-popping results. Plus, we'll travel 1,500 miles to show you two of America's top trails, plus one that was world-class until it was padlocked. Xtreme 4x4 starts now.
Recently on Xtreme 4x4, we decided that we wanted to put together a small, single-seat, four-wheel steer crawler on a realistic budget. Now, we did it in an area of our shop that we're calling a two-car garage fab shop. We put it all together underneath our mezzanine. And the last time you saw this chassis, it was sitting on tires and wheels and was a true rolling buggy. The project started with a Bentech Pro assembly file that we got from our buddy, Jeremy Winters. Now, we watched his crawler go from a pure idea to an awesome, one-of-a-kind, single-seat, four-wheel steer buggy for under 10 grand. So we knew we had to have one of our own. We bent up some tubing, put together a chassis, and slipped in a truly unique drivetrain, Acura Integra 4-cylinder, and a Honda Civic transaxle. Finally, to finish it off, tossed together a set of killer Toyota steering axles front and rear, bolted up a set of 42-inch tall pit bull rockers, and sat it down on some ballistic fabrication hybrid coil-over air shocks. Now, between then and now, we went ahead and completely tore down the buggy, and then went ahead and finish welded the entire chassis. Now, believe it or not, it took us over 12 hours worth of welding to make sure that we hit all the joints and didn't miss anything, turning the buggy onto its side and then onto its roof and back onto its belly pan. The last thing we want to do right now is miss a joint, or worse, forget about a tab that we need later to bolt something on, because right now we are ready to have this chassis custom painted. Now, when you're dealing with a very small tube chassis like this, it is honestly sometimes hard to find a body shop even willing to tackle the job. They're gonna have a great big paint gun. They're gonna have to crawl around on the inside of this buggy and try to spray everything out. But you can get a high quality automotive finish on a chassis like this in your garage just using aerosol cans. Now, the key to getting a somewhat custom paint job just using aerosol cans is to think outside the box a little bit. Don't just grab a color that you like and spray it on the chassis. Try some new things. There's a lot of new products out there that you can actually layer on top of each other. Now, what I have here are 3 different products, all from Duplicolor, and I've come up with what I think is a pretty unique 3-stage paint job. Using a piece of scrap tubing, we'll start with a base of bed liner. Now, this will not only seal the tube, but it will also give the paint a little bit of a texture, making it look like powder coat. Then we'll lay down 2 coats of Duplicolor Sparkle Silver. Now, this is a silver metallic that has different size metal flake in it, so it gives it some extra pop. Then we'll follow it with the red metal cast anodizing. Now, this is a see-through anodizing coating designed to be sprayed over chrome. It'll give us a deep, cherry look. With the tube out in the sun, you can really see the depth of this paint. Almost looks like a candy coat. The first step is to prep the entire chassis to remove any oil or grease from the tubing. And we'll start on the inside. That way we won't be leaning over wet paint. Safety is important here. Make sure you work in a well-ventilated area and wear a mask. Trust me, fumes from a spray bomb can make you go a little loopy. Use multiple light coats instead of one heavy coat. This will prevent runs in the paint. Now we're not just going to stop with some custom paint on this buggy. We're also going to put some body panels on it and then have a custom wrap made, basically a big sticker to cover it up, make it look cool. That'll save us a little bit of money because it's a little bit cheaper than having custom paint done. Plus, if we scratch it, we can just get another sticker printed out. Now you can use a bunch of stuff to make body panels. Pretty much any metal, even Lexan or plexiglass if you still want to be able to see your tires when you're sitting in the driver's seat. We're going to make ours out of 090 aluminum, but either way, it always starts with a good cardboard template. Now the hood and the two sides of this buggy will be the only panels that get the big sticker or wrap applied to it. And what we have to do now is take a picture of these two panels and then email it over to the wrap company so they can start to work on the design. The problem is when we take a picture, it's obviously not going to be to scale. So what we have to do now is drop a small square on each panel, mark it, and then mark every inch. So when they're looking at it, they can actually see how big the panel is. Then they'll ship the sticker to us and we can just apply it right here in the shop. Now I still obviously have to make the other side of the buggy for that panel and then do all the interior stuff. That's what we're going to do right now.
Coming up, find out why the government closed arguably one of the toughest series of trails in the East and learn what you can do to prevent this from happening again. Stay tuned.
Hey, Courtney Hansen here with you, back on PowerBlock. More Xtreme coming right up, followed by the rest of today's how-to lineup. Horsepower puts the finishing touches on our Year 1 Mustang track car that you will be able to win. Trucks wraps up Project Daily Driver, Ryan and Kevin with last-minute details before the big street payoff. And on Musclecar, it's part 2 of the MagnaFlow Foose Sweepstakes Mustang. We'll supercharge the car that goes to our winner next week.
A question that I get asked a lot is where can I go four-wheeling? Well, no matter where you live in this country, there's tons of public and private land with millions of miles of trails for you to enjoy. The flaky sandstone of Chokecherry Canyon offers up one of the most hardcore off-road experiences anywhere. Located outside the town of Farmington, New Mexico, you'll find Glade Run Recreation Area. 19,000 acres of public, federally managed land. You've got two choices here: 43 miles of limited marked trails and nearly 4,000 acres of open OHV.
Being local here in town, we're very fortunate to have all this out here. It's just a maze of trails. Everywhere you go, you'll see black marks going up, steep ledges and boulders. And it's just opportunities are unlimited. There's no real restrictions on where you can and cannot go. So it's pretty much you come out into Chokecherry Canyon, you just go at it.
Guys. I've conquered every wheat field in Kansas, but this is a little different.
This ride was put on by local members of the Cliffhangers 4x4 Club, appropriately named, since the rim trail here has a pretty high pucker factor.
See your hands.
We've got about a 60, 70-foot drop-off. And you got some pretty good climbs just right on the side, not real hard. Kind of off camber, and it's more of a fear factor, you know, looking over the edge, you know. Some of them are pretty easy, some of them are really hard, you know, probably in the 5 range. Some of the competition climbs are a one-shot deal. You either make it or you don't.
You can't describe the feeling that you get after doing that, the way your hair feels like it's standing up and it's running the chills up the back of your neck. It's got to be the greatest adrenaline rush I get out of anything else. Drag racing, mud bogging, whatever.
Bring it hard. If your idea of wheeling excitement is quite a few notches below this, then we'll head east of the Mississippi, where on the Kentucky and Tennessee border, you'll find land between the lakes. 170,000 acres rest between Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley. It's managed by the U.S. Forest Service, the same government agency who locked the gates on undeniably one of the most popular off-road trails in the East, Upper Tellico OHV in North Carolina. The feds here claimed recreational wheelers were causing extensive damage to the ecosystem, contributing to unacceptable levels of sediment into the Tellico River and its tributaries. That remains to be seen, since the final environmental analysis on Tellico has not been made public. In the meantime, one of our favorite places to wheel is Padlock. Slick Rock, closed. Lower 2, closed. Guardrail, closed. All 39 miles of trails, closed. Denying thousands of wheelers access to this public land. Which brings us back to Land Between the Lakes and Turkey Bay OHV. Officials here are proactive in promoting responsible wheeling. And although nowhere near as challenging as Tellico, these trails remain open.
The Forest Service believes that and supports that OHV riding is a valid use of public land. But we all have to work together to find a way to make it sustainable for all the generations to come after us.
That's what we like to hear. How do they control sediment runoff?
What was happening here before we put these blocks in was, it was a low water creek crossing, a high impact area on the main trail, and we had riprap sunk within the soil. But over time, through storm events, spinning tires, the riprap began to churn out. So what we've implemented here is a hardened stabilization with interlocking cable blocks. This is a stream that constantly holds water, so there's always flow. This is just going to help keep this one specific sensitive area hold up in the long run a little bit better.
Turkey Bay offers up 100 miles of nice, wide trails. On the difficulty scale, they're about a 2. But if you love nature, you can wheel during the day, camp, fish, plus get about as close to a bison and an elk as you can imagine. So how can you help keep your local OHV open?
Volunteer. Volunteer at the guard shack. Participate in the cleanup days. Get on their mailing list and they'll keep you updated on what's developing through the government, through their programs. Just volunteer. That is the best thing that you can do. As long as we can continue our coordination with the National Forest Service, the volunteer activities, I see no problem that we cannot keep this open. But it's going to take everybody working together.
Now that's some great advice to help keep public land open to the public. Now there should be local groups in your areas that are called the Friends of organizations that take care of specific trails where you live. But don't forget about national groups like the Blue Ribbon Coalition. They're out there fighting to keep our trails open every day of the week.
I have to show you guys this my PowerBlock video because it qualifies as extreme. It's Robert Niesel's creation that he calls the Beast. It's a late 60s Ford garden tractor with a 350 Chevy. It may no longer cut grass, but it sure sounds good and looks wild.
We're back on Xtreme and putting our single-seat buggy back together. Tearing this thing down to paint the entire chassis was definitely the right move. It'll really set this buggy apart when we're out on the trail. Now, even though our buggy is incredibly small, we still want a winch on the front of it for a couple different reasons. Obviously, first of all, if we get stuck, we can spool it out and pull the buggy out to get it back on the trail. But more importantly, if we take this buggy out and we get it high centered on an obstacle, come up onto a big rock, and it's just basically hung up on the skid plate, we can compress the front suspension using the winch. We'll simply attach it to the front axle and draw it in. What that will do is bring the center of the gravity of the buggy more towards the front, and we'll hopefully just roll off that obstacle. Competitive rock crawlers do it all the time. Now, since the buggy weighs in at just under 2,000 pounds, we don't need a full-blown big winch. So we opted for the Warn 9.0 RC winch. Now, the RC stands for rock crawling, and this is a competitive rock crawler's winch. It's obviously a lot smaller than a full-size winch, but it still has a 9,000-pound line pull, and it uses synthetic rope instead of aircraft cable. Now, the size of this winch, as well as the pulling power, make it ideal for our little buggy. Now, with a small buggy, sometimes packaging can become an issue, but we lucked out because of our small 4-cylinder engine. We don't need a really large fuel cell to handle an entire day of wheeling. So we're going to install this small 3-gallon aluminum fuel cell that we got from Summit Racing. Now, the nice thing about these small cells is they have foam inside them. Now, that foam will keep the fuel from sloshing around when you're riding on the trail and keep it from flowing out of your overflow vent. All we have to do now is bolt this into the back, run the fuel lines once the motor's back in. We were able to source a stock Geo Metro radiator that'll help keep our 4-cylinder perfectly cool. And a fan, because everyone loves having fans. Now, right now on Xtreme, we're going to be starting something a little bit new. Now, sure, we build a ton of trail trucks, some serious tube buggies, and even some Jeeps. But we know that a lot of you guys out there have trucks just like this. You drive them on the street every day, and maybe every now and then you take them out on the trails to do some light wheeling. And this is a pretty good base truck. Mid-90s Dodge, solid axle front. It's actually a great truck for that purpose. The downfall is when you lift the truck up like this, put a big tires and wheel package on it, you're going to blow the fuel economy right out the window. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this truck, we're going to do a couple little tips and tricks to it to improve your fuel mileage, as well as make it a better off-road truck. We're going to keep track of all the data, and then you'll know what will improve your fuel mileage and what won't. Right now, this truck rocks about 8 miles to the gallon with a good mix of highway and city driving. We're going to try and get this truck up to close to 20 miles per gallon, but still make it strong enough that you can go wheeling and big enough that it'll look good on the road. Now, the first little trick we're going to try to save a little bit of money on fuel is under the hood. Now, the V8 in this truck is just like most domestic pickups in the fact that it has a mechanical clutch fan at the front of the motor to keep the engine cool. That fan is driven by the engine as it turns, and it draws air across the radiator. Now, the plan here is simple. We're going to remove the mechanical fan and therefore remove that load from the engine. To keep the radiator cool, we'll install an electric fan. That way, we'll be using power from the battery to keep our truck cool instead of power from the motor. By saving that power in the motor, hopefully that'll get us a little better gas mileage. Now, obviously, we won't know what the little trick we did today does to our fuel economy until we take the truck out and drive it a lot. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We'll roll this truck back into the shop a bunch of times in the next year and have a look at how each little upgrade affects the truck's final fuel economy. At the same time, we still want this truck to be a good weekend wheeler, so we have other upgrades planned as well, like gearing and new tires and wheels. Remember, the goal here is to get close to 20 miles to the gallon, drive it every day, and have a good off-road wheeling truck. And today, we spent less than $100, and you guys could easily do this to almost any truck that has a mechanical fan. Ditch it, replace it with an electric fan. We'll let you know how much money we put back in our pocket next time we got it in the shop.
meet the man behind this Lingenfelter custom supercharged Camaro in 10. But up first, it's an all-new horsepower with more on our year one track car.
Okay, the big turn. Hey, do you recognize this car? Well, probably not the way it looks now. You see, it's part of our plan to build a special track car, built just for fun on the road course. Now, we built the engine first, a 347 small block using primo parts designed for power and durability. And since the car is going to be a tribute to Vic Edelbrock,
Right, you ready for another one?
You damn right, bigger and better.
we gave him the honor of running it on the dyno.
Go, baby, go.
518 horsepower to 347 inches.
Wait till 4 years then.
The body started life as a bare metal 68 Mustang shell.
Pull it forward a little.
Then after many hours pre-assembling all the major drivetrain, suspension, and safety stuff, we blew it apart. So Rick Bacon could do his thing, bringing our 3-color paint scheme to life. He used a paint called PPG Delfleet Evolution. It's a thick industrial paint that's more likely to survive the track abuse than others.
It's a lot of red.
Man, Rick and Tommy did a great job. Even went the extra mile to cover the interior and undercarriage. They've got a little touch-up work to do, but nothing to keep us from getting back to work.
You got it. We're gonna start with the roll cage. Now, as you might remember, it came from Auto Power. It's all pre-bent, and it gets bolted together with supplied sleeves. So all Chris and I have to do is slide it back in, hopefully without scarring up the paint. The Kirky race seats with the frames attached can go back in next. Now time for a little elevation. And with the hood and fenders out of the way, there's plenty of room to reinstall the Global West Stage 5 front suspension and Willwood brakes. Now since we pulled them off as an assembly, they're going to go back on the same exact way.
Well, now the rack and pinion unit can go back in place, along with the steering shaft. That wraps up our work up front for now. Next, we can roll in our Curry 9-inch rear end into position so that we can bolt up the leaf springs. Can't believe how cool that color combination turned out. That Mustang's going to be almost too pretty to take to the road course. Meanwhile, I've been thinking about a question I want to ask you. How's putting that car back together a lot like racing, dating, and even eating reheated lasagna? Simple, they're all easier and better the second time around. Hey, looks like Jazz got the memo about our red paint scheme. Good match.
This 347 can haul the mail inside just about any car. And inside our stripped down lightweight pony, it's gonna be like a go-kart on steroids.
This PST drive shaft is the first thing to go on the car that we didn't pre-fit before. And I'd say we're making progress, especially since this is the last part of the drivetrain.
It's made from lightweight aluminum, and what that translates to is less reciprocating mass when you accelerate.
Well, before we can fire up the engine again, we got to feed it. And for that, we're using one of Edelbrock's electric fuel pumps that flows 80 gallons an hour at 6.5 psi. It's preset at the factory at 12 psi, which means that we'll need to install their fuel pressure regulator up front to squeeze that down to about 6 for our carburetor. Now, we'll get that mounted and run our fuel lines by the time we get back. Deal?
Guys, meet Ken Lingenfelter of Lingenfelter Performance Engineering. Ken, this is one hot car.
Oh, thanks, Courtney. This is what we do.
Now, you made a huge splash at SEMA, understandably, and the car won the GM Design Award. What are the specs in this 2010 Camaro SS?
This is a 427 LS7. It's got a Magnuson Eaton supercharger, makes 750 horsepower. Of course, we do the body enhancements too, the front spoiler, the rockers, the rear spoiler, the wheels.
Well, it is an absolutely gorgeous package, and the interior is no slouch either.
Yeah, thanks, Courtney. We like to leave our mark on everything, from the pedals to the floor mat to the video in the rear view mirror.
Well, there's a warranty too?
There is, 3 years, 36,000 miles.
Wow, you guys have thought of everything and have definitely left your mark. We'll tell you later in the show how you can get one of these, but right now we are heading back to horsepower.
Our painted horsepower track pony rode back for final assembly. Come on, guys. Soon we were on a roll with the suspension, brake components, and our 9-inch rear end. The motor went back down in the bay, the transmission back up underneath, and we capped off the drivetrain with a new aluminum shaft.
This fuel pressure regulator is the last link to our 347's fuel system, and we're going to mount it right down here on the inner fender well. Now this will also give us a clear path to run the line back up to the carburetor. Now here's something that's really important when you run an aftermarket fuel system, and it can be pretty critical at times. You need to use grommets and braided fuel lines that won't get cut or chafed. Now the fuel pump, it needs to be mounted so it's gravity fed and just above the chassis for protection. Now run the lines away from heat or moving parts using the dowel clamps to keep them in place. The fuel line leads to this fuel pressure regulator that's adjustable from 5 to 10 psi by turning the adjustment screw. With another clamp in place, we can run the line to a fuel filter we've already mounted to the carb.
All right, the brake lines are next in line, and anytime you're dealing with a custom setup like this, you're going to have to do your own bending, cutting, and flaring yourself. Of course, to make a double flare, it all starts with a nice clean cut. We're going to use this Matco kit that comes with an assortment of adapters and dies, plus this hydraulic cylinder that does a lot of the critical work for us. First step is to put the dies in place. Then the tube itself, flush with the end here, tighten her down. Now we take this first adapter, place it inside the cylinder, twist the handle, all right, start compressing. That'll be plenty. Now we release it. This first adapter creates a flare against the die. The second die is shaped to roll it out, and after following the same steps as before, there's the double flare. Then you slide a flare nut on, and you'll have the compression you need for brakes that'll keep you out of the trunk of the car in front of you. Now with all the brake lines cut, bent and flared, we can run them along the frame rail, avoiding any places where they could get pinched. Now for easier and neater installation, we're using clamps from a company called Made For You.
To keep the 347 cool during road course laps, we're using a Griffin aluminum radiator with twin 12-inch fans pre-mounted to the back. Now we fabbed up our own factory-style aluminum brackets to keep our radiator secured, and the hole we're drilling down here is for the radiator overflow tank. Now we got it from Jazz, and with it bolted in this way, we can drain it from the underneath and the coolant stays out of the engine bay. Since this motor is going to be running at some high RPMs, the crankcase pressure is going to try to force oil out of the breather and the valve cover. So we're going to run this Moroso separator breather in one to force that oil into a catch tank like this. Now routing it this way prevents any possibility of oil running down the side of the valve cover, getting on the header, and possibly starting a fire. First off, we mount the catch tank here on the driver's side inner fender well. Next, we go ahead and weld a bung into the driver's side valve cover. Now we can screw on the breather separator. Now just connect a -10 hose from the catch tank to the breather. Now some of you may be wondering, how in the heck are you going to remove the breather to put oil in the motor? Well, the answer is simple. Just unscrew the top of the breather, remove the element, and in goes the oil.
I guess it goes without saying that wiring for a track car is a lot easier than a street machine, no AC or definitely not a stereo. We were able to find in one box a painless race kit with everything we need. Now this control panel has rocker switches for the usual: start, ignition, fuel, electric fans, lights, and one extra that we'll find some use for. Now it also comes with this massive front mount fuse box. You can put it anywhere you want, but I think we'll tuck ours away under the dash. For easy access, we're mounting the switch panel on top of the roll bar, and a couple of ordinary hose clamps are perfect for keeping it secure. We're covering up our harness wires with this painless power braid, and this stuff's great for a nice clean installation. Now we're going to run this first one from the control box down the roll bar, and we'll use zip ties along the way to keep it snug. Mounting the fuse box only takes a couple of holes in the firewall, and when the box is in place, another set of hands can tighten it down. Meanwhile, Chris is getting the year one taillight assemblies installed, and we're about ready to make all our wiring connections. So don't you blow a fuse, we'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to Horsepower. Well, the Mustang track car is racing down the home stretch, and we'll be a few laps from the finish line ourselves after the wiring.
Yeah, and we got a whole lot of it left, but hey, trust me, it won't be that bad. First step's easy enough, hooking up this weather pack. With that connection, the switch panel is wired to the fuse box. Now we can start routing the rest of our wires from the harness to their sources. Now some go through the firewall and into the engine compartment, some go to the rear of the car. For this, just make sure you take your time and make everything as neat as possible. That means keeping them wrapped in something like power braid, routing them along the floor pan seams, and using clamps where needed.
After welding a small bracket to the roll bar on the driver's side, we can install a kill switch. This will let the driver quickly shut down the engine if needed. The switch is wired to a solenoid that's connected to the battery and the starter. Ours is a lightweight Pro Torque starter from Summit with a 4.44 to 1 gear reduction ratio and 342 foot-pounds of cranking power. And after wiring up the main lead from the solenoid and an ignition wire, it's ready to use. Then with the grommet in place, we start routing this bundle of wires through the firewall and onto their destinations. One of those will be this Petronix flamethrower coil. We're mounting it on the passenger side fender wall as close as possible to the distributor. Well, I think I'll get started mounting up the gauges. Of course, the tachometer is the most important one, so we're going to bolt it up right here for the driver's easy access. Now, we also need to fab up an aluminum panel to cover up this hole here for 4 other gauges, and to get our dimensions correct, I'm going to make a paper template. Now, we're going to add about 1 inch up here to take advantage of these bolt holes, so I'll go ahead and mark them for reference. Then we transfer the pattern to the sheet of aluminum, and after using one of the gauges to mark circles, I'm going to use our drill press and a hole saw bit to cut the holes. Now don't forget, it's better to cut them a little on the small side to be safe. Then you can use a die grinder and some test fitting to get them perfect. We got all these gauges, including the tack from Stuart Warner: oil pressure, oil temperature, water temperature, and voltage. Well, that gauge panel fit in perfectly, and with the tack in place, we'll be able to read all the race car's vital signs. Now, I know right now what some of you are thinking: where is the speedometer, right? Well, it's left out on purpose. You see, according to traditional racing wisdom, a speedo is a distraction for a driver. He should use the tack and what's ahead to judge speed. So I guess if the rule's good enough for NASCAR, it's good enough for us, right? Well, now we can bolt the steering column to the bracket and pop on the wheel. Well, I'm proud to say the engine bay still looks pretty neat and clean, even after installing all this plumbing for the oil cooler.
Yeah, it may look like a lot, but it's pretty simple. Come down here, I'll show you how it runs. From the block, we come over to this bracket where the oil filter will actually mount. And then from the other line, that comes up to a cooler, which is mounted on the front of the radiator. Now, the most important thing on this whole setup is you want to make sure you remember how the flow direction goes. If not, it can be pretty catastrophic for the motor.
I can imagine. Now, I know your daddy always said fill these full of oil before you install them, but fact of the matter is, we're going to prime the entire oiling system before we even start the motor and check for leaks.
Next, we got to drill 3 more holes in the firewall, fill them with grommets, then run hoses from the front and rear brake master cylinders and the clutch slave cylinder, and connect all 3 to the respective reservoirs under the dash.
You know, no matter how much planning you do with a project like this one, there's always going to be surprises along the way. For example, pretend I'm the driver, I'm harnessed back in the seat, I reach down to bang gears, and, well, I can't make my arm any longer, so we had to do something about the shifter. A problem we shifted over to Chris. Hey, what do you got?
Well, I just came up with a bracket to move it back about 8 inches since your arms are so short, so it should work for the dyno run.
Okay, that's pretty thick. It ought to hold up. Let's see what it does.
That's the idea.
Better than what we got, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it looks kind of weird, but actually works. Works pretty well.
They say the devil's in the details, and we've covered quite a bit of them on our Mustang today, but we're only a few details away from finishing it up. Are you guys down for that? Then stick with us.
Today on Horsepower, we've been busting our bolts to wind up this Mustang track car project. We just finished the exhaust and wired up our Petronix Igniter 3 distributor. before bringing in some outside help to install glass for the windshield and rear window.
Yeah, it doesn't look right, does it? Nope. Bubble top. Or a lot of goo, one of the two.
Well, that's a real pain in the glass, but you can't pre-fit everything. That's not stopping us, though. We're moving on to the body work, starting with the bumper assembly, some trim, and some vintage bling, including this repop gas cap, even though it's just for looks.
If our fastback was destined for the street, we'd go ahead and run lock tumblers in the doors and in the trunk. But who wants to carry around a set of keys at the track all day? So what we're going to do is pretty simple. Utilize a piece that comes with the tumbler sets to make it easy to get in the trunk and refuel this thing. With a hole drilled and a cotter pin and washer in place, slide the assembly through the tumbler hole. Once through the mechanism, place a washer and a cotter pin just like on the other side. Spread them out. Cut off the excess length. Place a grommet in the tumbler hole, and check this out. Now, onto the doors.
We got all of our factory style replacement pieces from year one, of course, and tell you what, if you ever do a job like this one or a restoration job, this is the most important part of your list, the assembly manual. A lot of these things don't come with instructions. Now, we don't want the original door panels with armrests on this track car, so since Chris has been so creative this weekend, we got him to make a pair of lightweight door skins out of aluminum.
Cool. Go figure it fits.
And so does this cowl cover we got to keep water and other elements out of the cockpit. Well, next, the Mustang makes a fast trip back in the air for some rear-end gear oil and manual transmission fluid. Then we can bleed the brakes and finish filling up all the fluids. After a quick check of the fastback's electrical system, time to bring this 347 beast back to life.
All right, let's go ahead and fire it. Very cool. First fire up in the car.
Yeah?
I'm happy with it.
Got good oil pressure.
Thing is loud. Ugh. Very cool.
We're now on to the front end finale.
So, what's next? Well, we're gonna book some track time for the Mustang. And in a few weeks, you'll see what it takes to get a car and driver ready for the road course. Then we're gonna put it through some serious laps and prove that our little pony is track worthy. After that, we'll load it up and bring it back for a sweepstakes giveaway where you could win this thing. And we'll keep you updated on the PowerBlockTV.com website.
If you want more performance, less weight, and great looks in your next car, you might want to consider one of Holley's new Ultras. This is the Ultra Avenger. Comes with extra strong aluminum base plate, metering blocks, and a clear fuel level sight window. Plus they come in colors, red, blue, and this one, black. Now check this out. An Ultra version of the bad boy Dominator. Now this thing is also lighter than ever before, loaded down with billet, and comes with hand-polished Venturis for maximum airflow. Now this could be a sure way to make your race car ultra fast. Well, we've had a pretty fast day here in the horsepower shop, and now we get to work on something for next week. We'll see you then.
Hey guys, we're hanging with Ken Lingenfelter of Lingenfelter Performance Engineering. Now Ken, let's talk about your company. You guys have been in the high performance business for more than 30 years?
Yes, that's correct, Courtney. John Lingenfelter started the company in the late 70s. John and I were distant relatives and friends. And John was somewhat of an icon in the racing and high performance world. He earned 13 NHRA titles throughout his whole career. Tragically, John died after a racing accident in 2003. But the legend lives on at Lingenfelter Performance. We're continuing to build high-performance cars and performance engines and parts.
Well, I know a lot of people here at PowerBlock. We're personal friends with John, and we all think it's amazing that you're carrying on his legacy.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Courtney. It's a lot of fun.
Nice. Well, more on the Camaro later, but right now, here's trucks.
Today, we're finishing up our 66 C10 short bed conversion by adding a customized exhaust system and showing you how to make it shine. Then, recovering your upholstery is actually easier than you think it is. It's all today here on Trucks.
It's gonna look pretty good. Hey, welcome to Trucks. Well, we're finally coming down the home stretch on our 66 C10 project. Now, we've been working on this thing for quite a while, and I think both Kevin and I are equally anxious to get this thing finished up, get it out on the street, and get some drive time. So today, we're gonna throw an exhaust system on it, we're gonna recover our factory bench seat to match our now two-tone interior, and we'll deal with a couple of other issues as well.
Now, here in the truck shop, as a matter of fact, all of us here at the PowerBlock, well, we use every waking moment to tie up loose ends and take care of some of the stuff that we just don't have time to show you on TV. The C10 here, well, it's no different. So we wanted to give you a little tour of some of the stuff that you haven't seen yet. Now, we've been taking care of things like the heater hoses held down with the made-for-you clamps. The accessory drive system is all in place with some pretty good-looking chrome stuff from Spectre. Now, over here, the master cylinder's in place, but obviously the brake lines aren't completely plumbed. Now, we're using Borgeson universal joints to connect our I Did It steering column to the 1972 Chevy steering box, and along with a wiring harness, LMC Truck hooked us up with the underhood plastic stuff that usually deteriorates over time. Now, this is not a lawnmower battery. As a matter of fact, this is something brand new from XS Power. This is their compact sealed AGM battery. It can be mounted to any orientation, and with 900 cranking amps, it's all the power we need for this truck. Now, we think the crown jewel of this whole truck is the vintage 283 that's still in there, dressed up with the Edelbrock components like the EnduraShine carburetor, intake manifold, and especially the vintage breatherless valve covers. As a matter of fact, when Vic Edelbrock himself was in here, he said those valve covers are the ones his dad designed in the 60s. So we think it's pretty darn cool to have some automotive history right here on our truck.
Now, the exhaust system we're using behind our little 283 is a MagnaFlow system. We were pretty psyched that somebody even made a kit designed for our old 1966 Chevy. Now, this system's got an X-pipe in it. It's 100% stainless steel, mandrel bent throughout, and has a pair of MagnaFlow mufflers to give us that deep, mellow sound. And it's got all the brackets, hangers, and clamps we need to install this thing. Now, our truck's pretty heavily modified as far as suspension goes, so we may have to make a few adjustments to get this system to work, but it's a great place to start. Now, when doing a typical exhaust system install, well, we usually start at the rear of the catalytic converter flange or at the header collector and work our way backward. This time, we're starting with the tailpipes, working our way forward. And with our fully polished mufflers hanging where we want them, well, we can work on connecting them to the headers using the supplied X-pipe.
All right, now before you snug your collectors down, you want to clock them so that the flat spot is facing the ground, especially with a lower truck.
Now, because our C10 suspension is pretty heavily modified and not so typical, we're having to do quite a bit of marking, cutting, and fitting to get the system to look like we want it to. But it's definitely worth it because the X-pipe is going to help us with both exhaust flow and sound. Cool. Still got clearance to get the tranny pan off.
We might have a header leak right here.
Now, so far, the installation has gone pretty smoothly, but just like we anticipated, we've run into a few fitment issues because we don't exactly have a stock suspension system. So we went ahead and ordered up some 2.5-inch stainless steel straight tubing from MagnaFlow to help finish the job. We'll just use the straight sections, install it into the muffler, and connect it straight to the X-pipe.
Now, to make it look good and flow just as well, we're going to use some unused bends that we've got kicking around. We'll pie cut the middle of the bend and insert it, make a nice smooth transition.
Now, this technique works perfectly here, and it'll give the exhaust gases a nice smooth transition or pathway, even if you don't have access to a mandrel tubing bender. Now, stainless steel exhaust systems are definitely going to cost you a little bit more up front, but there are advantages as well. One of them being the ability to ditch a standard type exhaust clamp in favor of just welding two pieces together, grinding it down and polishing it, making two pieces of tubing look like one. And it'll give it that high-end custom look too.
Now, when you're welding stainless steel, it's ultra important that you have a perfect gap, especially when you're fusion welding like Ryan is here. It's also mandatory that you clean and prep the substrate before welding. Here's a tip. Get a dedicated brush and keep it specifically for your stainless. That way you won't contaminate it. Now, a fusion weld is just the process of melting the two pieces together, and with stainless, it's very forgiving and very easy. Ryan's now adding filler rod to give us a little bit more of a filling property, very much the same as body filler on a sheet metal panel. And we're going to dress this down and finish it out in a minute. Now, the scuffing pad creates a really nice brushed look, but you can still see the welding joint. So we're going to show you how to take it up a notch, polish it to a mirror gloss. Here's how. Now, we're starting out with 40 grit on a rotary grinder. Now, this is just to establish our basic shape. Just like bodywork, you start with the coarse grits first. We'll follow that with 80 grit on a hand sanding board. This is to eliminate the scratches of the 40 grit as well as to put a linear scratch pattern into the substrate. Next, we'll step up to 180 grit, but we're not using a pad this time. We're allowing the sandpaper to contour around the tubing to work our shape more. The red scuffing pad is pushed in the same direction and puts an even finer scratch into the stainless steel. Now, this is a process of working your way up through finer grits to eventually create something that can be polished. Now, we're going to polish our sanded areas with the same two-stage method we've showed you in the past, coarse and fine, starting with priming the coarse compound onto the coarse wheel. For the first stage, we're using a compound that's specifically formulated for polishing stainless steel. Now, this is important. The orientation of your workpiece needs to be about the 4 o'clock mark with the wheel rotating towards you. And if you've ever seen the movie Tommy Boy, you know that a workpiece can get launched across the room, maybe even taking a finger with it. So be careful. Now, stage 2 is done with a white rouge compound on a softer wheel. Now, you can see how this works. It takes what scratches are left and levels and polishes them to a beautiful mirror gloss. Stainless, being the soft substrate that it is one of the easiest metals besides aluminum to polish into gloss. All right, let's take a look at what we got. Right here is our unpolished fusion weld. As we rock it around a little bit, you can see where the fusion weld's been polished and unsanded. Rotate a little more, it's been sanded, polished, and buffed. It looks really good. However, take a look at this. Look where the fill rod has leveled out the surface. It looks outstanding. Now, a small section like our test piece is easy to move around the buffing wheel, but if you've got your whole system welded together, you can throw it on a bench top and get to it with hand tools. Either way, you're going to have a substantial time and investment, but I'm sure you'll agree the end justifies the means.
Up next, you finally get to use hog ring pliers. Yeah, that's really what they're called. And later, we'll explain what a Phalanx test is and what it measures. Stay tuned.
Hey, welcome back to Trucks. Well, out of all of the things that we have worked on the interior of our 66 C10, the seat is not one of them. And although from a distance it might look like it's in pretty good shape, but if you look a little closer, it is filthy and the dirt is embedded into the grains of the vinyl to the point to where it can't be cleaned. So we're going to do one of the easiest interior upgrade projects that you can possibly do on a budget. We're going to just give it a facelift, change the seat cover. That's nice and clean. Oh, nasty. Look at all the feces.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, my goodness.
Let's grab the hazmat suit.
Yeah.
Jeez. This actually looks to be in pretty good shape.
Actually, this is in really good shape. The jute covering is still in nice condition, and the seat foam still retains its shape, so all this thing really needs is a cover. Now, after eliminating all the signs that our little friends were ever here, we can start working on the exposed seat frame, which starts with sanding it down and then prepping it with a Duplicolor prep spray. Once you wipe it down, make sure it's dry, we're going to apply a Duplicolor semi-gloss black to closely resemble the factory finish.
Now, this is the cover we're going to be using to cover up and freshen up our factory bench seat. Now, typically, we'd reach for the solid gray cover, but we noticed in the LMC catalog, they had this two-tone gray and white cover. We thought it might look pretty good, so we'll check it out and see how it looks. Now, we've had this thing sitting out in the sun a little while to make it a little bit easier to work with, but you can get the same effects by using a hair dryer or a heat gun. Just don't get carried away. Now, just like the factory did, we're going to hold our seat back cover in place using hog rings and hog ring pliers, which have a groove cut into them so it'll hold onto the hog ring and won't let it slip out of place while you're crimping it to the seat frame. And once you have one done, you get to repeat the process about 11 billion times. Shoot, that laid out pretty good.
That's it. That's gonna look good in there.
Yep. Now the seat bottom is gonna be a little bit different than the seat back. We're gonna ditch the hog rings and the hog ring pliers because the original seat cover and the replacement seat cover both get held on by clips. Just get pushed on by a screwdriver. It's gonna make the job a little bit easier. In pretty good shape. Start by attaching the seat bottom cover in just a few spots, but don't finish the job just yet. All right, cool. Now before you get carried away and put all your clips on the seat bottom and lock it into place, make sure the stitching lines up. That way, end up with a nice professional look. Heck yeah. Cool.
Hey, we're back on PowerBlock, and now let's continue on with trucks.
Hey, welcome back to Trucks. Well, I think it's safe to say by now that we and the rest of the automotive world have proved the superiority of synthetic lubricants over conventional. As a matter of fact, the guys over at Horsepower have shown us that on their chassis dyno, you can actually free up more horsepower just by switching to synthetic lubricants.
Now, way back in the 1930s, engineers developed a test to determine a lubricant's film strength, and at which point it fails. It's called the Phalanx test. And today, Royal Purple wants to use that test to prove something to us.
So today, Patrick Burris is here to show us some of the differences between conventional spray lubricants and synthetic spray lubricant. Patrick, tell us a little bit about what we're using to compare these products.
This is a Phalanx test machine. It uses a 1/4 horsepower electric motor. The motor rotates the shaft. We have an amp meter that measures amp draw, and we have an arm to apply our weights, which will apply pressure to a stationary bearing.
Now, Patrick here's a lifelong gearhead, just like we are. He's been in motorsports his whole life, and if his face looks familiar, you've probably seen him before on television. Now, you've done this test thousands of times. Walk us through this. What are we doing?
We're going to take samples of our aerosol lubricants. We're going to place them in this cup so we can lubricate them on the rotating bearing and apply pressure to the stationary bearing to see how well they perform under a load.
Now, we wanted to keep this test about synthetic versus conventional, so we covered up the labels on all the conventional spray lube cans. Each 2-pound weight that's added to the lever arm adds 75 pounds of force to the bearing. And even with the bearing spinning in the conventional lube oil bath, well, that force is all it takes to bring that motor to a screeching halt. The amp meter shows how hard the motor has to work to keep the bearing spinning. And it's pretty easy to tell when the lubricant fails. Now, with each new test, a brand new stationary bearing is used. And so far, it's only taken 3 weights to find the film strength failure point of the conventional spray lubes. After 4 conventional lubricant tests, Patrick cleans and fills the machine with Max Film synthetic spray lube. Now, just like the other tests, after the 3rd weight is applied, the amp draw increases a bit, but following that, the amp draw is reduced and the bearing continues to rotate. And to really prove the point, Patrick completely removes the oil bath and lets it run dry. He even adds 2 more weights.
Now that is impressive. So tell me in terms that I can understand what the difference is.
Max Film leaves a dry film lubricant behind. That's why the machine continued to run even though we had taken the oil away from the bearing surface.
So even when the oil is gone, the dry film lubricant stays on the contact area?
That is correct.
Well, there you go. One more good reason to choose a synthetic lubricant over conventional. How long will this keep going?
How long do you want it to run? Want to go have lunch?
Yeah, let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Now, one of the last big pieces we've got to install on our 66 here is a radiator. Now, even with today's modern, efficient engines, about 1/3 of the energy produced is wasted heat energy. Heat your radiator's got to get rid of. And the more fuel you burn, the more horsepower you make, the more heat the engine produces, and the bigger the radiator you're going to need to keep it running cool. And even though we made a pretty good improvement over the stock engine's horsepower rating with a 280+ horse dyno pull, well, we're still within a safe range to go with a stock type radiator. Plus, we're going to save a few bucks over the more costly aluminum version. Now, when filling your cooling system, keep in mind that where you live, or more importantly, the climate you live in, is going to dictate the percentage of antifreeze in water. And actually, 100% water is the most efficient way to enable heat transfer. But adding the antifreeze does a couple of things. First, it'll prevent any corrosion from occurring on all the metal surfaces, and it'll keep your block from splitting in half on extremely cold nights. Now, as far as fans go, well, we had thoughts about keeping the stock mechanical fan. But it doesn't have a clutch on it, which means it's going to be spinning as fast as the engine spins no matter what, even in 20-degree weather, which would definitely keep the engine cool. But it would also put off that annoying whirring sound cruising down the road. Not to mention the fact it's going to cost us 10 to 15 horsepower to spin the fan. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not trading horsepower in favor of some irritating noise. So we're going to be going with an electric fan, something we can control in the cab or with a temperature switch installed in the cylinder head that'll activate the electric fan at a predetermined engine temperature.
Now, you've seen us use and talk about Monster transmissions before. Well, their product line also offers transfer cases. Now, these transfer cases are completely remanufactured and thoroughly tested. They feature new bearings, seals, fork pads, even a heavy-duty Morse chain, and they're rated up to 650 foot-pounds. Now, this heavy-duty NP271 will work with Chevy, Dodge, Ford, and Jeep trucks with the help of an adapter. And on top of all of that, they offer a 12-month unlimited mileage warranty. Monster Transmission stands behind their products. For more information, go to monstertransmission.com.
All right, well, our two-tone interior has really come together, especially with our painted door panels, our freshly covered bench seat, and our ultra snazzy white rim steering wheel. Now, if you got any questions about anything we used on today's show, go to PowerBlockTV.com. Thanks for watching Trucks. See you next week. That's pretty cool.
Today on Musclecar, the MagnaFlow Foose Mustang gets a new stance and a lot more muscle, then hits the pavement for a test drive. Plus, take a look back at 45 years of Ford's famous pony car.
Hey guys, welcome to Musclecar. Our MagnaFlow Foose Mustang is back in the shop, and even though it's looking pretty good, we ain't done with it yet.
This car is going to be a combination of Chip Foose style and our need for speed. And when we're done with it, we're going to give this one-of-a-kind modern-day muscle car away to a lucky PowerBlock fan.
The first thing we did when the stock 2010 Mustang rolled into the shop was let Chip Foose come up with an all-new design. We bolted on a MagnaFlow exhaust, got the graphics laid out, then rolled it into the booth for a new paint scheme. With the paint and graphics done, we added a Roush body kit and a set of Foose wheels.
The paint and wheels look great, but she's kind of got an altitude problem. Some Eibach lowering springs will give it the stance it needs. Throw on some Baer brakes and some Bilstein shocks, and she'll be ready to handle our plans for under the hood.
We are all about cramming more power down the throat of this pony, and the Edelbrock's E4 supercharger fits the bill. Coupled with our MagnaFlow exhaust, it'll bring the stock 4.6 liter from 315 horse to well over 450.
The latest generation of Mustangs have been engineered so even an average guy working in his driveway can do almost any repair. The whole teardown for this supercharger install took less than an hour. The guys at Edelbrock have made this supercharger easy to install. You can go from box to pavement in less than a day.
And with its unique inverted design, there's no hood clearance issues. You don't have to punch any holes in your oil pan, and with a handheld programmer, you can tune it yourself, which means there's no waiting at all for your ECM to make its way through the mail.
The first thing to go in is the heat exchanger, followed up by the water pump.
Now, you guys have heard me say before how much I hate wiring. That's one cool thing about this kit. It comes with basically a plug-and-play wiring harness, so you don't have to worry about melting your engine down because of one sensor that's not hooked up correctly. Just swap out a couple connectors and one splice. Even I can handle that. There are some advantages to late model wiring. One is that all the plugs come apart with no cutting, which means all you need is a little patience and focus. Easy. While I was exploring my newfound wiring skills, Tommy was finishing up the plumbing for the heat exchanger.
This kit uses the stock coolant and bypass tubes, but since the spacing on the intake is different, they have to be cut apart.
Every bracket and pulley you need is included with the supercharger. Since the addition of this kit alters the routing of the accessory belt, Edelbrock has redesigned the idler pulley setup with a bracket that makes it a no-brainer. With all the groundwork done, it's time for the meat and potatoes of this project. The intake O-rings go in, and that big old lung goes on.
The kit includes a set of 41-pound injectors that snap into the factory fuel rail. Replacing injectors is kind of like jetting a carburetor. In a carb, if the jets are too small, you lean out and detonate. It's just as important in a fuel-injected car. You've got to have the right size injectors, and Edelbrock has eliminated the guesswork.
Another stock part that requires some minor modification is the belt tensioner. The new setup requires more travel, so the factory stop is out of here. The setup requires the alternator to face rearward instead of forward, so a different pulley is going on. While I have it on the bench, I can get the wiring extensions attached.
With most of the hard work done, we're installing the throttle body and radiator hoses. We also decided to ditch the factory airbox and upgrade to an Edelbrock cold air kit. Now we've just got to tie up all the loose ends. This car is being built to showcase some hardcore performance parts, and that doesn't happen sitting on a trailer. So we're using Royal Purple synthetic oil filter and oil to keep it protected no matter who's driving it. The only thing left to do is to plug in the programmer, download the tune, and fire it up. But you're going to have to wait to hear it rumble.
Yeah, because we still have boxes of parts to throw at this thing before it ever hits the street. But stick around because we'll be finishing its transformation into the MagnaFlow Foose Mustang coming up next.
After the break, find out how an inch can make all the difference.
Hey guys, we're back with Ken Lingenfelter. Now Ken, I'm sure our viewers are just dying to know how they can get their hands on one of these Camaros.
Well, Courtney, the guys at Lingenfelter Performance can help our customers find a 2010 Camaro at a Chevy dealer. And the car has to be in their name before we can do any modifications or upgrades. There's lots of options available. This car behind us is about a $48,000 package, although there are lots of different horsepower packages available and different body modifications available.
How long does it take to build?
6 to 8 weeks, Courtney, and our customers can reach us at lingenfelter.com.
Easy enough, and you guys did an amazing job. Congratulations, this is a sweet car.
Thanks, thanks.
I'm sure John would be very proud.
Thank you very much.
Hey, welcome back. We've got the front suspension all removed and we're ready to start installing some of our upgrades. These Bilstein struts have tighter valving for quicker response. The iBox springs will improve handling and give it more of an aggressive stance by lowering it more than an inch. Before the new Bilsteins can go on, I need to install the stock shock mounts to them. I'll be using a spring compressor to do this, but I'm guessing you probably don't have one of these in your garage. No problem. Just take them to a shop and they'll get you fixed up in no time.
Now, one nice thing about not going overboard on the lowering is we don't need camber correction kits to get the front end aligned. Everything bolts together just like the factory parts. We got lucky on the yellow struts and the red sway bars. The colors match our new graphics almost perfectly. The stock rotors look puny next to these big Foose brakes built by Bear. They'll keep this pony reined in with no problem. Now, when you're doing suspension modifications, it's important to address the vehicle as a whole. If you only modify the front suspension, you could end up with a car that oversteers. If you only modify the rear suspension, it could understeer. That's why most companies offer kits. Now, we want the handling on this car to be as neutral as possible. So we'll be replacing the brakes, springs, shocks, and rear sway bar to all match the front. Well, that's it, man. We're all out of parts to put on this thing. Now all we have to do is bleed the brakes, put the rubber back on it, and put a quick tune on the engine. Then we can take it out for a cruise, and that's coming up later in the show.
Up next, America's best-selling pony car is celebrating 45 years. We'll take a look back at how it became the legend it is today.
Mustang, the original. Mustang, 3 new ways to answer the call of Mustang.
It's hard to imagine the car world without it. Ever since it hit the ground in 1964, the Stampede hasn't let up. And the Mustang of today still captures the style, the power, and the spirit of the pony car that kicked it all off 45 years ago.
When the Mustang debuted on April 17, 1964, more than 22,000 were sold that day. By the end of the second year, more than 1 million were on the road. But the Mustang may have never left the stable without the vision of one man.
In 1962, Ford was still fresh off the Edsel disaster. Ford VP Lee Iacocca saw a way to revive the Blue Oval brand with his total performance concept.
It first took shape in the Mustang 1, a futuristic-looking mid-engine 2-seater roadster, but Iacocca knew it was too impractical and he'd never get it approved for production.
So he pushed for a low-priced sports car, small and fun to drive, but roomy enough for 3 of your friends. To keep down costs, it had to be designed on the same frame as the Falcon and reach showrooms in less than 18 months.
The designers went back to the drawing board and came up with something a lot like the classic Mustang we know today. With some more refinements, it was unveiled at the New York World's Fair, and the country went wild.
It could be any car you wanted it to be, a sleek coupe, sporty ragtop, or killer fastback. You could get a six-banger or a high-powered V8. Bucket seats, a 4 on the floor, and a laundry list of options, all with a price tag starting at just $2,400.
The first GTs came late in '65 and included things like fog lights, rally pack gauges, and 271 horses under the hood.
The man, Carroll Shelby, engineer, race driver. The car, the Shelby Mustang GT.
Ford teamed up with Shelby all through the 60s to create a limited edition series of race-ready Mustangs. The GT 350 was a two-seater sporting racing stripes and horsepower ramped up to over 300.
'67 was a turning point, the year it got its first big block. Shelby dropped in a 428 that made over 400 horse, known as the GT 500.
The original Mustang. It opened up a whole new way to swing.
Now get ready to swing again. Mustang 69.
The little pony got bigger and badder as the 60s came to a close. Trans Am Racing spawned the Boss 302 and the Boss 429. It was so big they had to modify the suspension.
The Mustang muscled its way into the '70s, but gradually the oil crisis and EPA regulations took their toll on performance. In '74, it was stripped down to an economy gas sipper called the Mustang II, and sport versions had more bark than bite.
5 years later, the Mustang was resurrected with a fresh look on Ford's new Fox body, ushering in a new era of performance. The GT package returned in '82, and the '83 models got a 5-liter engine with 175 horses, the most since the '71 Boss 351.
For the 4th generation, Ford brought back the classic styling cues of the original, like side scoops, 3-element taillights, and the signature long hood and short deck.
When the pony car turned 40, it was time for another revamp. And this time, Ford really went retro, bringing all the elements of the original design into the 21st century. It was an instant hit with the public, reigniting muscle car fever and spurring Chevy and Dodge to play catch-up.
Not to be outdone, Ford unleashed a bold new version for 2010, one that added a more aggressive stance to that iconic style. For almost half a century, the Mustang has been proven that it's one wild horse that won't be broken.
Coming up, the guys put this one-of-a-kind pony through its paces. Find out how you could end up behind the wheel.
Hey guys, welcome back. We finally got this dude down on the ground, and I don't care what anybody says. 1 inch can make a world of difference. I mean, look at it. This thing looks mean. Now, it took a few minutes and downloaded the tune out of the programmer. We are finally ready to take this thing out on the road, see what kind of beast we've created. Ooh, that sounds good.
Not bad at all.
Hell yeah. We finally caught up on our sleep, so we were able to let some blacktop roll under the new rubber.
I really do dig the exhaust, man. It sounds good when you call on it, or even if you just kind of ease into it, keep it under the radar, if you know what I'm saying.
70 miles an hour, it's just a nice little rumble.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool. Just let you know there's something going on, you know? I like it. Now, it may not ride like your grandma's caddy, but it definitely rides nice enough for a cross-country trip. No problem. No, the suspension upgrade's really tightened up the handling, man.
Tell you one thing that I really enjoy about this is the whine of the supercharger, man.
Dude, I'm honestly impressed with the supercharger. It even tunes itself for you. You know what I paid to tune my Mustang after my last engine? Almost $1,000. It cost me to bring it in and have it dyno tuned and a new ECM burned in the whole bit. It was almost $1,000. And we'd also like to give a big shout out to Bear Brakes because their brakes were good. Whoa, Those are awesome, man.
Great.
Hey Ford, congratulations on 45 years of the Mustang. Send another one our way on the 50th anniversary, and we'll do it all again. Woo! You know, days like this make those long days and long nights all worthwhile. I'd like to give a big thanks to our good buddy Chip Foose for helping us turn this bone stock GT into the MagnaFlow Foose Mustang.
Yeah, you can enter to win this beauty at PowerBlockTV.com, so check it out.
Heck
Let's
yeah.
ride, man.
Right on. We still got some gas left, man, so until next week, we're out of here.
Well, as you know, we have picked a winner, and next week we are handing over the keys to our MagnaFlow Foose Mustang. I can't wait! Hey, a big thanks to Ken Lingenfelter for bringing in his sweet Camaro. For more information on Lingenfelter Performance Engineering, visit the blog on our website. I'm Courtney Hansen, and I'll see you next time.
Next week on Horsepower, it's more Mopar madness.